News viewers, today we bring you the latest situation in the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. In our previous reports, we mentioned that Ukrainian troops entered the Kursk region of Russia. This was a move that Russia did not expect in the course of the war and was considered a big strategic surprise. According to the information we have at the moment, the Ukrainian army has advanced to a depth of 20 kilometers in the Kursk region and is conducting its operations within this region. This development shows that the war is not only taking place on Ukrainian territory, but also in Russia's internal regions. Kursk is historically known as a region of strategic importance for Russia. Therefore, Ukraine's attacks on this region are a source of great concern for both the Russian military authorities and the Kremlin. The Ukrainian military operations in this region can be considered as a part of both a military and psychological war strategy. The entry of Ukrainian troops into the Kursk region has created a situation that requires Russia to take urgent measures to secure itself militarily. However, the Russian army's defense lines in this region were caught off guard by Ukraine's surprise attack. This resulted in a weak and disorganized defense line of Russian forces in the region. At the same time, this operation has had a huge repercussion inside Russia. The Russian people are watching with concern as Ukrainian forces are actively operating in a region so close to their borders. This development, which poses a threat to Russia's internal security, may also lead the Kremlin to consider its war strategy. So, what is the latest situation in Kursk? Let's analyze it together. Before moving on, here's a small reminder. As the Anchor Daily News team, we strive to bring you the latest developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so that you don't miss our daily reports and explanations. I also read all your comments on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content in the comments section. Tell us in the comments what content you would like to see on the Anchor Daily News channel. Now let's start if you're ready. Anchor Daily News reports. As tensions in the region grow by the hour, the 488th Regiment deep in Kursk finds itself in the middle of a carefully planned siege operation by the Ukrainian army. The regiment was an important part of Russia's internal defense lines and had been involved in heavy fighting since the beginning of the war. However, this sudden Ukrainian offensive had fallen on the regiment like a nightmare. In the early morning hours, the regiment's command center began to experience a series of bizarre communication outages. At first, they dismissed it as a simple technical failure, but it soon became clear that the situation was much more serious. The regiment was almost completely cut off from the outside world, and the radios emitted only static in a strange silence. Sergeant Yevgeny Sokolov, one of the regiment's commanders, could not hide his uneasiness at the silence. The defense plans prepared in advance were being reviewed and emergency protocols were being applied to the troops. However, the Ukrainian forces had carefully planned every step to use this silence to their advantage. Using the woodlands and farmland surrounding the 488th Regiment, Ukrainian troops approached the regiment like an invisible net. At first, the Russian soldiers were met with a few sniper shots and the sound of distant explosions. This was enough for them to realize how close the Ukrainian troops were and how tight the encirclement was. In the following hours, the sounds of explosions and fighting began to increase around the regiment. Ukrainian troops quickly and effectively broke through the Russian defense lines in this area and began to take control points around the regiment one by one. Soldiers inside the regiment did not know what to do in the face of attacks from all sides. Vehicles were trying to quickly change positions while mortars and anti-tank missiles fired from the Ukrainian side were dealing a huge blow to the Russian lines. The air echoed with explosions, bringing the harsh reality of war home to the soldiers. The fighting intensified rapidly after the encirclement of the 488th Regiment, but not for long. In the face of the Ukrainian army's strategic superiority and sudden attacks, the Russian soldiers' resistance began to crumble. There was both physical and psychological collapse within the regiment. It was at this moment that the regiment's sergeant, Yevgeny Sokolov, realized how high the risk of losing his men was. Sokolov was one of the commanders of the 488th Regiment and a leader respected by the soldiers in the unit. Even in these difficult times, he kept his cool, determined to lead his regiment out of the situation with minimal casualties. Seeing the hopelessness of the situation and the pressure of the Ukrainian forces, Sokolov realized that there was no possibility of escape or victory. The broken lines of communication within the regiment, the lack of ammunition, and the superior number of the enemy forces made resistance almost impossible. Sergeant Sokolov did not want to lose his regiment. Their lives could not be sacrificed in an unnecessary bloodshed. In his difficult situation, as a leader, he had to make one of the most difficult decisions: surrender. Although this decision was a heavy burden for a soldier, Sokolov felt that saving human lives was a greater task. Before making the decision to surrender, Sokolov had a short talk with the soldiers around him. He told them that the best way out of the situation was to surrender. Although the soldiers initially found this decision difficult to digest, they trusted their commander and under his leadership agreed to surrender in order to survive. When the fighting stopped, Sokolov raised a white flag. This flag symbolized the intention to surrender to the enemy, as they had been trained before the battle. When the Ukrainian soldiers saw the white flag, they stopped firing and approached cautiously. Sokolov ordered his soldiers to lay down their weapons and put their hands on their heads. This was a universal sign of surrender. As the Ukrainian troops approached carefully and cautiously, they saw Russian soldiers slowly moving out of their positions. Suddenly, there was a deep silence on the battlefield. Sokolov stood in front of his troops and clearly and honorably announced his decision to surrender. The Ukrainian soldiers, seeing that the Russians were unarmed, began to take them prisoner. After the surrender, footage of Sergeant Yevgeny Sokolov went viral on social media and was viewed by millions. In these images, Sokolov's tired and sad expression reflected the brutality of the war and his anger at Russia's military leadership. During an interview, Sokolov blamed the Russian war leadership for what had happened. He said that Russia's strategic mistakes and mismanagement had put his troops in such a difficult situation and that the war had been unnecessarily prolonged, causing great harm to Russian soldiers and people. These statements resonated widely with Russia and internationally, and Sokolov's remarks further strengthened the criticism of the war. What do you think? How will the situation in Kursk take shape? What do you think about the surrender of Russian soldiers? How long will this operation continue? Let us know in the comments. We read and care about them.